Imagine going to a Stoic philosopher 2,000 years ago and telling him about your bad day. You lost your job, someone betrayed you, life feels unfair, you expect sympathy. Instead, he looks at you and says, "Stop. What you are doing right now is not sadness. It is a crime against your own mind." That sounds cold, almost cruel. But the Stoics were not cruel people. They were some of the most disciplined thinkers in history, and they believed something that most of us today have completely forgotten. Self-pity is not an emotion you simply have. It is a decision you keep making over and over without realizing it. To understand why they believed this, you have to understand the core idea of Stoicism. The Stoics divided everything in life into two categories: things that are up to us and things that are not up to us. Your health, other people's opinions, the economy, an accident, another person's betrayal, none of that is up to you. But your judgment about these things, that is entirely up to you. This is where Epictetus, one of the most important Stoic teachers, made a statement that still shocks people today. He said, "Men are disturbed not by the things which happen, but by the opinions about the things." In other words, it is never the event itself that destroys you. It is the story you tell yourself about that event. Losing a job is an event. Telling yourself, "I am worthless, my life is ruined, nothing good will ever happen to me again," that is not the event. That is a choice of interpretation. And Stoics believed making that choice again and again is what actually creates suffering, not the world. Now here is where self-pity specifically comes in. The Stoics did not just see self-pity as unpleasant. They saw it as something far more dangerous, a rejection of reason itself. Why? Because self-pity requires you to lie to yourself. It requires you to tell yourself that you are a passive victim with zero power, when in reality, according to Stoic philosophy, you almost always retain the power to choose your response. Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor who wrote his private thoughts in what we now call meditations, constantly reminded himself of this. He lost children. He led wars. He dealt with betrayal from people he trusted. And yet, in his own journal, written only for himself, with no audience, he refused to indulge in self-pity. Instead, he wrote lines like, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." He treated self-pity the way a doctor treats an infection, something to be caught early and removed before it spreads. This is the part that makes Stoicism so uncomfortable for modern audiences. We live in a culture that often treats self-pity as valid, even healthy. We say things like, "Let yourself feel it," or "You deserve to be upset." The Stoics would not necessarily disagree that difficult emotions are real, but they drew a sharp line between feeling pain and marinating in it. Feeling pain, for the Stoics, is natural. You are human. Something bad happened and your body and mind react. That is not weakness. But self-pity is different. Self-pity is when you take that initial pain and turn it into an identity. It's the difference between, "This hurt me, and I am someone this always happens to." One is a temporary reaction. The other is a permanent story you start living inside of. And once you're living inside that story, something dangerous happens. You stop using reason. You stop asking, "What can I actually do about this?" And instead, spend all your energy asking, "Why does this always happen to me?" The first question leads to action. The second question leads nowhere. It just loops. And Stoics considered anything that removes your ability to think clearly and act rationally to be essentially an attack on the very thing that makes you human, your reason. This is why Epictetus, who was born into slavery and later became one of the most respected philosophers in Rome, refused to see himself as a victim, even though by every measure he had every right to. He had his leg permanently injured by a master's cruelty. He lost his freedom for years. And yet his teachings are filled not with resentment, but with a relentless insistence that your circumstances do not define your character. Your response to those circumstances does. Seneca, another major Stoic voice, added something important to this idea. He said that we often suffer more in imagination than in reality. Self-pity thrives on repetition and exaggeration. It replays the wound over and over, adding new layers of despair each time until the story becomes far bigger than the original event ever was. So what does this mean for you, practically? The next time something goes wrong, the Stoics would suggest a very specific test. Ask yourself, is this thought helping me solve a problem, or is it just helping me feel sorry for myself? If it's the second one, according to Stoic philosophy, you are not being emotionally honest. You are choosing comfort over responsibility. Because self-pity, even though it feels bad, is strangely comfortable. It requires nothing from you. You don't have to act, change, or take responsibility. You simply get to suffer and call it fate. This does not mean you have to pretend to be happy when something painful happens. It does not mean suppressing real emotion. Stoicism was never about becoming an emotionless robot, despite how the word stoic gets used today. It's about refusing to let temporary pain rewrite your entire identity into that of a permanent victim. The next time life throws something difficult at you, try applying this ancient filter. Separate the event from your story about the event. Feel what is real. Then ask the only question that Stoics believed actually mattered. What is now within my control, and what am I going to do about it? If this idea challenged the way you normally deal with pain, that discomfort is exactly where growth begins.